We've got to.
This is only 2 or 3 verses, isn't it?
Yeah.
We've got a whole series of
Yeah.
thing going on here.
So, sustain. In the wilderness. So, do you want to look at wilderness?
Let's look up wilderness, yeah.
I mean, we all tend to think we know what wilderness is.
Wilderness is, yeah. How do you envisage wilderness? That's like a jungle to me.
Well, it's funny because I've been to Israel and their wilderness is sort of like rough tufts of grass and rocks, and you might see an odd bush or another, and caves and that kind of ground. But often we think about wilderness as in a spiritual thing, and in life, how we might be feel just we're not getting anywhere, and we feel like we're not hearing God, or we don't recognise God within our life. I think a lot of us think of wilderness like that as well. But I'd be interested to see what this particular...
Well, it's not actually, that word in that bit is not in here for some reason. So whether the NIV, which we're looking at, have changed that word wilderness, because the other word it might be is desert. I'm wondering if... Let's look up the word desert and see if it's got it in there, because I found this in a couple of places in this concordance. They must have probably slightly changed in the newer NIV.
It's funny, physically, earthly, we think of as a desert as being sand. Just, that's what I think of as a desert.
Yeah,
anyway.
dry,
just sand.
Is arid a word? Dry and arid.
Yeah.
I don't know what arid is, but let's look up desert.
Just, like you see the Sahara Desert, you just see heaps and heaps of sand, great hills of sand.
Yeah.
No roads or footpaths, or I think that you might come across an odd oasis where there's a bit of water, but that's very few and far between, maybe even days apart, especially if you're walking. But,
It's made me laugh actually. Years ago, I took my children for... We often used to go on this long walk, and it would take a good couple of hours. We'd take the dog. Usually we had to pick up our little dog and carry her the way back, because she didn't really like walking too far. But we'd be like half an hour down the road, and they'd be asking for a drink. Want to go to the shop and get a drink? I thought, we've only just started out.
Yeah.
Why don't you bring some water with you or something?
Does sound a bit like the Israelites, actually.
Yeah, I was like, well, you just started moaning now. I've only just got it. Right, so in here, yes, in here. So in this, it's saying that the word for wilderness is desert, which is 4497. Let's have a look at that. 4497. I want to write that down as well. Desert 4497. There we go. I only really know the basics of how to use this concordance, but it's enough to know how to get out of it what we want, isn't it?
Yeah.
4497. I found out I could just kind of work it out myself.
I could do with one of these. This one.
It's
brilliant.
Fantastic, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very rare I've not found a word in it. That's very, very rare that I haven't. 4497. Here we go. Midbar. Midbar is the word. That's interesting. I like that word, midbar. Midbar. Desert, wasteland, barren wilderness, desolate land that supports little life, open country, suitable for grazing, open wasteland, wilderness, barren wilderness, deserts. Here, open country, there, here and there, I suppose, wandering here and there.
Yeah.
So
what are the key words in that then?
Desolate land looks out, doesn't it? Desolate land.
Yeah.
He's just sustained them in a desolate land. I mean, how many desolate places have you felt in over the last few years? I know I've been in a few.
Yeah.
When you feel just désolé.
Yeah.
Flipping hard, really, really hard times.
Barren. Wilderness. Yeah.
So barren, like when somebody can't have a child, can't give birth.
Yeah.
a place of not giving birth. So that comes to mind, you know. No birthing.
Yeah.
Which often is related to promises. Because they weren't in the promised land yet. So this is a barren land.
Yeah.
There's no life.
Yeah, and I mean that really speaks to you of a spiritual barrenness.
Spiritual barrenness. Yeah. This is why I love reading this with Holy Spirit, because you get so much more, don't you?
Yeah.
Than if you just read it under the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's much better to read it with the tree under the tree of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
Much better.
So that's interesting, isn't it? In like
land,
you said, you can really
desolate land that supports little life.
Yeah.
A desolate land.
That's interesting, that life word, isn't it? Because again, spiritually, if we're spiritually barren, it doesn't give life.
Yeah, and we can't support anybody else. We're not going to be a resource to anybody.
No. Yeah.
So literally, he was. You know, I mean, I can honestly say when I started out live by faith, when I lost my job last year, and the Lord said to not get a job, between last July and January, he provided everything, just like manna. All the bills were paid on time, every single one. And then something shifted come January, and it was like, now I want you to become a resource. And I'm like, man, and this is why I'm looking at this, because this is where the bread and bread and butter. This is where the promise is. This is where the promised land is. Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Prosperity is in prosperity are in the pages of this book, and I'm not a name it and claim it merchant, and I'm not not like that. And Suzie knows I'm not, but. I can't resource anybody else if I've only got bread and butter for myself. I want to be a community resource for people, and so there has to be something that I'm missing that God wants me to learn. I want to have this good. I want the good spirit to instruct me, and bring to mind what He's taught me over the last 40 years and pull it into action. That's what I want to do.
So what? They lacked nothing. Do we want to look at lack?
Lacked. I want to know what nothing looks like as well. So they lacked nothing. Yeah. Because that's quite interesting as well, isn't it?
Yeah. Yes, because you tend to think, they didn't lack anything. They had everything they wanted, which is a lot different than everything they needed. Isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Lacked. That's EFGHJK. Lacked.
But there are other verses where God promises us abundance, and I mentioned it before about Jabez and the prayer that he prayed, and he prays a prayer that we tend to think we daren't ask God for. But he prayed that God would bless him, that God would expand his boundaries. So in that context, he was talking about land and his livestock, because that's what he was. He was a farmer. He had livestock and he had land. So he was asking God to expand his boundaries. And then he says, but I want you to go with me. I want you to lead me in everything I do in my whole life, which I think was a whole key, to his prayer. And then he asked God to protect him from the evil one. I mean, but we tend to think, can I ask God to expand my boundaries? Can I ask God to give me more? I don't know whether that's a British thing, that we tend to be reserved in what we ask for and what we expect. But
my granddad, I said this on that thing the other day, my granddad said to me, it's a bucks, he's quite bucksy the way he spoke, and he's from the East End of London, but he said, if you don't ask, you don't get love. Duck.
Yeah.
If you don't ask, you don't get duck. That's what he said.
Yeah.
I was like, and
that's in the scriptures, isn't it? That's in the New Testament.
Ask and you shall receive.
Ask and you shall receive.
Now nothing is not in here. Nehemiah, where's Nehemiah?
So it must be a different word in whatever that translation is.
Oh no, here we are. It is. Yeah,
Is it
I think they're close. Yeah, here we go. Sorry, I'm not looking too far back. It is 4202. 4202. I've written down both numbers because the 2893 is so lacked is 2893.
Yeah. So we're going through. I'll remind you again. We're going through verse 21, which says, "For 40 years you sustained them in the wilderness. They lacked nothing." Which is how far we've got in that verse, and we're checking it out.
So, to lack, to have nothing, to go down, recede, to make lower, to deprive, to cause to lack, withhold, lack, lacked, run dry, always, depriving, goes hungry, gone down, had nothing, have too little, in want, made lower, number is less than, recede, scarce, withholds. Pretty.
So I picked up the word deprived. So they were not deprived of anything then.
No.
It makes you wonder, why they took so long to get it. They just didn't get it, did they? That God was providing everything for them, and that He was, such a massive and awesome, mighty God. But they just didn't seem to get that, even going round and round and round in circles. Apparently they say that they could have done the journey in 2 days, but they took 40 years.
Yeah. Because He couldn't take them into the promised land until they'd understood, until they'd been fully instructed and understood, because they would not have made it.
No.
They just wouldn't have been able to be. They just couldn't keep it going. They would have died.
And they just needed to fully understand that their God was, the God of everything. And through all that they went through and all that happened while they were wandering around for those 40 years. Was real instruction and trying to get them to see that God was there for them in everything and in every way.
So 4202 has got a lot of
good gracious me
words here. And
what's that, on nothing or on lack?
This is on nothing.
On nothing.
It's lacked nothing. So shall I just go? Shall I just
give us some of it?
Just some of it. I won't read all of it. There's tons here.
Those that really stand out to you.
Okay, so nothing, without, cannot, neither, don't, no, didn't, none, nothing, isn't, failed. So they lacked no failure. Failed. That's a good one. That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Refused. Injustice. Disobeyed, displeases, ignorant, beyond, unclean, without, childless. This is what nothing would look like. So they haven't lacked any of this.
No. So even though they were wandering around for 40 years, they were still having children in that time, because that's part of it, wasn't it? Because he said that generation would not be allowed to go into the promised land.
Yeah.
So, they were still having children. There were new people being born. New people being born into the Israelite tribe and into the Israelite family, that would grow up knowing and experiencing all of that, and would know no different, would know all God's provision for them.
Yeah.
That's amazing, isn't it? That means that there would be a generation that will never be looking to go back to Egypt and back to their old life, because they didn't know what that was like or understand what that was like. They would only be looking to go forward with God.
I mean, there's loads of words in here actually. So if they didn't lack any, so if we replaced nothing with these words, you would say they did not lack, they were not deprived of. Let's change lack to they were not deprived of failure. Sorry, they were not deprived. So there was no failure, is what I mean. It's hard. It's hard to turn around. They were not deprived of justice. They were not deprived of children. They were not deprived of clouds. They were not deprived of power.
Yeah.
So they had power. They had children. If we turn this around, they had victory. They had justice. They had children. They had power. They did not feel worthless. I mean, these are spiritual. He provided for them spiritually, emotionally, physically, generationally, in every which way. I mean, it's just that there's just tons of words here. Undivided loyalty, unfaithful, ungodly, unjust, unless, unprofitable, unquenchable, unrighteousness, unsharpened, useless, weakness, weather. So if you turn that around, they had all that because they didn't lack it.
They were not deprived of that.
They were not deprived of it. Not deprived of it.
That's
I mean, to me, that looks like the promised land, but that is not. That's where I've been living for years. But the Lord's saying, no, there's something much bigger than that.
Yeah. Something even better than that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. We're missing out on the promised land, and actually, I'm really challenged by it. Very challenged by it.
Full of milk and honey.
Yeah. Deuteronomy 8 talks about that. Milk and honey, doesn't it?